Why I want to work for the VA? It's simple. To help people that are like me. It's all about taking care of veterans.
I've worked a lot of different government agencies. The difference is that I come to work knowing that I'm going to help somebody today.
When you truly understand the patient that you're taking care of isn't just a patient, but a service member who raised their hand to defend our rights, do you have the ability to make a difference in the lives of those who trust you to care for them?
For more information, visit www.vacareers.va.gov.
Well, happy Tuesday and welcome to VA Careers Live. My name is Mike Owens and I'm a national recruiter with the Veterans Health Administration, as well as your host for our weekly segment, Talk About It Tuesday. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time, I just want to let you know that we are here every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. So feel free to grab a snack, grab something to drink, and join us as we talk about careers here at VA. Now, again, whether you're tuning in for the first time or you've been with us for the last 2.5 years, we want you to be part of the conversation, so feel free to leave any questions and comments in the comment section. Our team and I will make sure that we go through those comments and questions throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the broadcast. We're going to go through those questions throughout the broadcast, and at the end of today's broadcast, as we do with every other broadcast, we'll take some time to answer maybe 3 or 4 questions and make sure that you guys know that your voices are being heard and we really care about what you put in the chat box. So again, if there's anything you want to know about VA careers, again, I only work in human resources and national recruitment, so I can't answer any benefits questions as far as disability, but I can answer questions about careers here at VA. So if you have any questions about careers, leave that in the comment section below. My team and I will go through those throughout the day, throughout the weekend again, also today during the broadcast, and we'll make sure those questions and comments are addressed. Also, we want you to share our broadcast because we all know someone who wants to work here at VA. So if you click the share button, well, let me ask nicely, can you please click the share button? We have a special hashtag that is dedicated to this program. That's #WorkAtVA. Again, #WorkAtVA. So can you please hit the share button, use that hashtag, and let's get this information out to as many people as possible. So with that being said, before I go into today's broadcast, we have a lot to talk about in the world of football this weekend. Number one, have you checked on your Alabama fan friends since Saturday? I know I have a lot of Roll Tide people watching here. So again, if your friend or family or you know a bunch of Alabama fans, please check on them because I think they're having a rough week. So kudos to Tennessee. I would have wore orange, but I don't have any creamsicle orange colors here. But and I unfortunately I have on Alabama colors today. But if you know me, you know I'm an LSU fan. So I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. So I root for the purple and gold. But just make sure you check on your Alabama fans. Also, Little Birdie told me that the Cowboys lost this weekend too. So check on your friends that are out there in Arlington and Dallas, Texas, and make sure they're okay. And I know I can't talk too much because the Saints are 1-4 now. We lost this weekend to the Bengals, and this is kind of uncharted territory because the Saints haven't been 1-4 since a long time ago. So with that, how did your favorite football team do? Whether you're college, whether you're NFL fan, or even if you're high school one. My high school also won. It was our homecoming week for high school, so my high school team won. So go ahead and put that in the comment section. I'm interested to see how your favorite sports team did this weekend. So with that, today we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare management and some senior level positions. I know last week we had a Q&A section. A Q&A session. And then a week before that, I talked about more entry-level positions. So today I want to go on the other end of the spectrum. I want to talk about senior leader positions or senior positions within VA. I get a lot of questions from viewers saying that they have experience in healthcare management or they have education in the healthcare management degree program. And they want to know how do they fit in the spectrum here at VA and in the Veterans Health Administration. So I thought about you all today, and I wanted to talk about that. So within the VA, you have your senior pay grades. Most people that work for the VA, they're under the GS pay scale. You have some people that are under the wage grade and then the senior executive pay scales, but most of your employees are in the VA in the GS pay scale. And GS 13, 14, and 15 are more your senior level GS positions. So we're going to kind of cover those today. So again, I want to talk to those who emailed me or who messaged me asking about healthcare management positions. So I want to specifically talk about a special career field that is basically healthcare management through and through, and that is health system specialist. Now, I was born in the 80s before technology came, so I just have it written on this little cue card here. So if you can see it, let it give it a chance. So health system specialist. So if you have any type of healthcare management, experience, or you want to get in healthcare management, I suggest that you go to USA Jobs or VA Careers and search for jobs under the health system specialist career field. Now, health system specialists, they're like the jack of all trades. I sometimes say that they're the ones that run the VA medical facilities, because they do a lot of different things. And there are two types of health system specialists. You have a non-supervisory health system specialist, and then you have a supervisory health system specialist. And a health system specialist, those pay grades can range from GS 9 up to GS 15. Although a lot of your health system specialist jobs are probably GS 12, GS 13. You have some that are GS 14, but they normally range between they can range from GS 9 to GS 15. But most of the time, if you go into USA Jobs or VA Careers, you see that most of your health system specialist positions are like GS 12, 13, 14, and you may even find a few 15s out there. So what is a health system specialist? Again, they're a jack of all trades in healthcare management. They coordinate, they're the primary liaison, they're the administrative and technical experts for a variety of programs within the VA, any one of the VA medical centers, or even VA-wide at VA central office. They're the ones that, they give direct support to the leadership within VA, whether it's leadership at the medical centers or whether it's leadership at VA central office or leadership within the various program offices that we have in the Veterans Health Administration. What type of positions do they have under the health system specialist job title? So one of the ones, and one of the most popular ones, is an executive assistant. Now, what an executive assistant does, the executive assistant directly supports someone in leadership. If you are an executive assistant at one of the medical centers, you directly support one of the members of leadership at the facility. So at a VA medical center, you have the director. It's called a PENTAD member, or it just depends. Some VA facilities have 5 members of leadership, some have 4. Those members of leadership are the director, you have the deputy director, you have the chief of staff, you have the associate director of patient care services, which is usually a nurse, and then you have an associate director and an assistant director. And each one of those members, they have someone that works right underneath them that's a health system specialist / executive assistant. So each of the members of that facility leadership or that medical center leadership, they're in charge of different departments within that medical center, or if you work VA-wide, different departments through VA. What that health system specialist or executive assistant does, they are the main liaison. They're like the middleman between that leader and all of those departments. They handle a lot of issues within those departments. They advise on a large amount of issues. They're basically the person that's the to-go to get to that senior leader. So an executive assistant, again, a lot of those positions are within the VA medical centers across the country. But you do have a lot of executive assistants that do work VA-wide at VA central office and everything. So just some other positions that are covered under the health system specialist job title. You have patient experience officers. You have research experts. You have data analysts. You have high reliability officers. A high reliability officer is someone who ensures that any changes that are made through the facility or the VA medical center or through the program offices, any of those changes have to make sure that we're putting the veterans first. And that high reliability officer makes sure that that happens. So again, we're talking about healthcare management here in the VA, specifically the health system specialist job title. And like I said, again, it's those positions are normally GS 12, 13, 14, some are 15, but they are perfect for any of you out there who have any type of experience in healthcare management, any type of experience or any type of education that covers healthcare management. And if you really want to be a leader, that's really the stepping stone to become a leader in VA, becoming a health system specialist, because you are the main liaison. You're the administrative expert. You're the technical expert. You have to be great at multitasking because you're going to be handling a lot of different issues. You're going to have a lot of different things coming your way. You're going to have a lot of different people needing your advice or needing you for a lot of different things. And you are the last stepping stone before these department heads get to the senior leader and the senior leader that you support. So again, if you love that type of fast-paced environment where you can do a lot of multitasking and you can direct a lot of different departments and you have experience in healthcare management, yes, I would definitely tell you to go to vacareers.va.gov or USA Jobs, type in health system specialist. Here's my old 1980s card. Type in health system specialist, and from there, you'll find a whole different variety of different roles that you can apply for. I would say just make sure that you read the job announcement, because again, you can find 10 health system specialist vacancies and all 10 of them will look different. And so you just have to make sure that you read through them to make sure that you're highly qualified for that position. So the next one, if you want to take that a step further, we have a health system administrator. Okay, so let's say you've been a health system specialist or you want to be one of those leaders that I talked about at the VA. Then instead of putting in health system specialist in the search bar, put in health system administrator. And those are your GS 14, GS 15 positions, and they cover job titles like an assistant director at a VA medical center, or an associate director at a medical center, or in many of your senior leaders that are not yet in the senior executive leadership positions, but they're still considered a leader within VA or at the medical centers. You can type in health system administrator, and if you want to be a leader, if you want to be an associate director at one of the VA medical centers across the country, you want to be an assistant director, you want to be in that direct leadership role, I would recommend that you go ahead and type in health system administrator. This is great for a lot of people who are served as field grade officers in the military, or you may have served as senior NCOs. Maybe if you're a command sergeant major or sergeant major or master chief in any of the services, or chief master sergeant in those E9 pay grades, or if you served in some type of maybe field grade, maybe your officer grade, your officer grades and your flag officer grades in the military. These would be great positions for you to go ahead and search for those health system administrator positions. So again, if you have any questions about health system specialists or health system administrators, go ahead and put those in the comment section. Again, we'll try to go ahead and answer those questions and get that information for you. So with that, I am going to go to our chat box now and see if I can answer some questions that you have submitted. So we have a question from, it looks like Taryn. Taryn is asking, any advice on a successful interview? I have mine on Wednesday. So first of all, I want to say congratulations, Taryn, on finally landing an interview. Or if this is not your first interview with VA, again, congratulations on making it through the certification process. making it to the hiring manager, and now making it to the interview process. So the biggest thing I want to say with being successful is be yourself. Don't try to be stiff. Don't try to feel like you have to be too professional that it doesn't look natural. Of course, because it is a job interview, you want to make sure that you are professional, but you want to be able to put a little bit of your personality inside the interview. So that's my biggest thing. Don't be so stiff or don't be so professional that your personality is not coming through during the interview, because hiring managers want to know a little bit about your personality. They're not going to ask you about your personality, but they're hoping that when you do answer questions, a little bit of your personality shines through. The next thing I would say is go and Google performance-based interview questions and look up some of those questions and have answers to them. Now, I'm not sure if your interview is going to be over the phone or if it's going to be over Microsoft Teams or some type of internet program. But I would say have notes there, especially if your interview is not face-to-face and they can't really see you. There's nothing that says that you can't have your answers written out on a sheet of paper or on index cards in front of you. Actually, I would recommend it. I would recommend that you talk out your answers, you write your answers down so that if that question comes up, you have already practiced it and everything, and you're good to go. So again, be natural. Write down some answers today for some of those performance-based interview questions. And I know it's hard to kind of figure out which questions they're going to ask you. But yeah, just make sure you act natural, act professional, and make sure you have some of your answers written down. And also ask questions. There's going to be a portion where they're going to ask you, do you have any questions? And make sure you ask questions. And don't feel free to ask, what type of candidate are they looking for? When I interview for positions within the VA, when they ask me that question, I always say, hey, if I was to be selected for this position, what would be my day-to-day duties, or what type of candidate or what type of employee do you want in this position that you're hiring for? And they'll sit there and they'll tell you. And you can ask them, what would be your day-to-day duties? I mean, I know throughout the time, positions evolve and duties evolve, so things change the longer you sit in one position. But yeah, ask them, what if I was selected for this position, what do you expect out of me? And if you ask that question, they'll be happy to answer that question for you. So again, thanks, Taryn. Thanks for that question, and good luck on your interview tomorrow. I hope you reach out or comment on this post after tomorrow and let us know how your interview went. And if you have any tips that you want to give to anyone in the audience, make sure you put those tips after tomorrow on how your interview experience went. So again, Taryn, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot, and we appreciate you submitting that question. So here, let's go through some more stuff. Monica saying, I'm interested in working at the community-based outpatient clinic in Kansas City. So it's called the CBOC, but it's a community-based outpatient clinic. What a community-based outpatient clinic is that it's a clinic, it's a separate clinic that's attached to a bigger VA hospital. Like here in New Orleans, we have the main hospital here in New Orleans, but we have different clinics that are attached to the hospital in different areas in New Orleans, different maybe surrounding areas or different rural areas that are right outside of New Orleans. So everyone doesn't particularly have to travel far to get to the main hospital, but those clinics kind of sit in areas that are sitting in the greater New Orleans area or the greater Kansas City area. So let me get back to the question. So, however, I never see it posted. I'm curious as to how one would go about showing interest in a CBOC position. So, Monica, first of all, thank you for your question. Now, I will say this, Monica, that every hiring manager or every VA medical center, they're able to, I guess, kind of be very vague in the job announcements that they put out. Now, a position may be open for a CBOC, but it may not necessarily say it's for a CBOC. It's just saying that, hey, like here in New Orleans, the VA system here in New Orleans is the Southeast Louisiana Veterans Healthcare System. Now, there may be a position open within the Southeast Louisiana Veterans Healthcare System, but it may not particularly say, hey, it's open at this CBOC or it's open at the main hospital. It just may say, hey, we're hiring for this position. And then when you interview, it may, the people you're interviewing with may say or may tell you that, hey, this is for a CBOC in the surrounding area. Also, if there's a CBOC in the surrounding area, you may see it on a job announcement where it says, hey, where is this position located? Like here, one of the surrounding areas around New Orleans is called Slidell, Louisiana. So if I see a VHA or Veterans Health Administration position open in Slidell, I automatically assume that it's for a CBOC because the main hospital is in New Orleans proper. So it's just different ways you can tell if it's for the main hospital or for a CBOC. Again, just read through the announcement. Sometimes the announcement will specify that it's for a CBOC. Sometimes you have to look at what the location is. Again, if the location is not Kansas City, but it's Olathe, Kansas, then if there's a CBOC in Olathe, Kansas, and I'm not sure if there's a CBOC in Olathe, Kansas, but I know Olathe is a suburb of Kansas City. But if it says Olathe, Kansas, then maybe it's telling you that's the way it's telling you. That's what it's using to tell you that it is it's for CBOC and not the main hospital. So my biggest thing, yes, all those positions, to answer your question, those positions are posted on USA Jobs, but you just have to read the announcement to know if that position covers the main hospital or if it covers one of its outpatient clinics. So thank you, Monica, for that. Thank you, Monica, for that question. I guess we have a question, but that doesn't really have, so it doesn't have a name, but it says, what is the pay schedule average like for GS 9 through 15 positions? How do you negotiate pay scales? All right. So every job announcement that you see on VA Careers or USA Jobs has a pay grade attached to it. It may be one pay grade where if you get this position, you're only in this one. But let's say it's a GS9. You get hired for a position and is only covered in the GS9. That means that while you're serving in that current position, you're going to only be a GS9. Now, you can move up to different steps, but you'll always be a GS9. And in order to move past GS9, you would have to apply and get selected for a different position. Now, you have some positions where there are ladder grades. Like I had a friend that just got hired as a veteran service representative, and her position is a ladder grade. It's a 9, 11, 12. So that means she's going to get hired as a 9. She's going to spend a year or so at a 9 and be eligible to get promoted to GS11. And then after spending a year as a GS11, she can possibly get promoted as a GS12. But that's because her position covers multi-grade, a multi-level of grades. So again, if you're in a position to where it's only one pay grade, you won't be able to negotiate, because when you got hired for that position, it specifically said that you're going to be hired at that pay grade and there's no promotion potential. The only way you can get promoted is if you interview and get selected for different position. But if it's a multi-ladder grade position and it covers maybe 2 or 3 grades, then that means if after you do a year in one grade, you can get promoted to the next grade. But that is not necessarily automatic. It has a lot to do with job performance and a lot of different factors in there. But if you're in a multi-ladder grade position, then you can move up that ladder until you max out after being eligible for each grade for a year. So I hope that made sense. But if you have any further questions, just feel free to leave them in the comment section. All right. We have Marable that's asking, how long does it take after a job posting closes before you're notified you have been referred to the hiring manager? So just to kind of go over the scenario. So Maribel's saying that, you know, she could possibly apply for a position. The closing date happened. You got the email saying that the vacancy has been closed on USA Jobs. How long does it take from the day that the job closes to the time you receive a letter saying you've been referred to the hiring manager? So Maribel, all I can say is that there's a lot of different factors that vary in this. I've seen it happen the next day, and I've seen it happen a month or 2 later. It just depends on the amount of applicants for that position. It depends on how fast human resources is able to work that particular vacancy, because you have to realize that human resources specialist, they're not just handling that one vacancy. They're handling maybe 5 to 10 vacancies at one time. So they have to work through that workload to make sure they have to work through it. And sometimes it may take a day, sometimes it may take a week, sometimes it may take a little bit longer. So I really don't have an answer to that, because again, like I said, I've seen it happen the next day. I've seen it happen the following week, and I've seen it happen more than a month later. So I would say that if you're starting to get nervous about it, if you haven't heard anything within 2 weeks, feel free to contact the point of contact that's on the job vacancy, or contact the HR department at that VA facility that you're applying for, and ask them if there's been any movement on that vacancy. So again, there's really no timeline. Everything is dependent on the workload of HR, and the workload under HR is really, really, really. There's a lot. They're working really hard. They have really a lot of things that are on their plate right now. So again, it can take some time. So I hope I was able to answer your question. Thank you for your question, Maribel. I have another question. Is there a way to get around time and grade requirements with education? So there is, and it's a little bit tricky. If you hold, let's say you're GS9 and you're trying to get a GS11 position, but you haven't been in your GS9 position for more than a year. Normally, the normal time that you have to sit at one pay grade is a year, 52 weeks before you're eligible to be promoted to the next pay grade. So let's say I'm a GS9 and I have 9 months in a GS9 position. So technically I'm not qualified to be a GS11, but I have education that can help me get to that. So I would say yes. What you have to do is that you have to highlight your educational background along with your experience. There's a button that says, when you're going through the questionnaire, there's a button that says, yes, I have an accumulation of experience and education to qualify for this position. You have to make sure that you highlight your education, because if you don't, if you just go off of job experience, they're going to notice that you're GS9. You've only been in GS9 for 9 months, and they're going to automatically assume that you're not eligible for GS11. So if you want to be considered for education also, you have to make sure that in your application, your education is highly, make sure that it jumps out at the hiring manager, because yes, there are ways around it. It's hard when you're already in the GS system. And another thing I would also say, apply under the announcements that are open for the general public. That's easier, because if you do that, then they're not really taking your current GS level into account. Sometimes they are, but you can kind of maneuver your application a little bit more to highlight education, because you're going against the general public. So they feel, okay, you're not a GS employee, even though you are, but you can kind of use your education and upload your any type of educational internships that you've done, highlight your classes that may coincide with the vacancy that you're applying for. But yes, you can use education, but your education, you really have to make sure you highlight any education that's relevant to that vacancy, and it has to jump out at the hiring manager. So yes, you can use education to kind of get around the time and grade requirements, but you have to make sure that education jumps out at the hiring manager. And yes, and you can, I won't say it, every situation is different, but there are workarounds. But again, it all has to do with how well your application highlights your application highlights your education. I'm sorry, I'm getting all tongue-tied. I guess I'm thinking about that Saints loss that we just went through on Sunday. But with that, we hit the bottom of the hour. So that's all the questions I was able to take today. Again, don't feel bad. We're going to go through those questions throughout the day and throughout the week to make sure that we go through the comment section. We answer those questions. Again, and any question that I see that we haven't answered on the live broadcast, we can always pick that back up on a future broadcast. So I'm always willing to answer as many questions. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time. I have 30 minutes at the max. But again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Again, tell me how your favorite sports team did this weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing those in the comment section once this broadcast is over. So with that, I appreciate you all watching, whether today was your first day or whether you've been with us for the last 2.5 years. Me and my team, we really appreciate you watching us. We really appreciate the comments and the feedback. Congratulations to some of you who have got hired in position with the VA through advice that you got off of our program the last 2 years. So we thank you. We appreciate you. And of course, if it's Tuesday, we're going to talk about it. And with that, I'll see you next week. Have a great day.